So good afternoon, everyone. This is Audrey Russo, President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Technology Council. And today, business as usual. I think it's like our 23rd week. Jonathan will verify that. We're joined by Jonathan Kirsting. He's all things marketing and media at the Tech Council, and you probably know him from Tech Vibe Radio, and even his 50 wonderful stories that he's been doing this summer. So as a programming note, we have some great upcoming sessions this week in addition to our guest today. We have Dr. Alicia Harvey-Smith, the president of Pittsburgh Technical College, and we have Greg Baer, just in time as school comes back. He's the executive director of the Grable Foundation. He's also the founder of Remake Learning. So as school is back in whatever session it is for each and every one of you, it's great to hear what's happening with the Grable Foundation. So Huntington Bank, Sheets, and Comcast are our sponsors and partners. Huntington has been with us right from the beginning and for a long time, involved in Tech Vibe Radio, but also very active SBA lender, and has been very active during the pandemic as well. And Sheets, if you don't know anything about Sheets, their mission is to provide fast, friendly service and quality products in clean and convenient locations, but they're also known across the industry in terms of ways that they constantly reinvent themselves. And they have an innovation center now in Pittsburgh, and they're working on just that, reinventing themselves yet again. And Comcast, we're pleased to welcome them. We've had long partnerships with Comcast, but they have been particularly active during this time of the pandemic and making sure that there's access to technology. And they've demonstrated a lot of leadership through this period of time, including us working on the digital divide. So use them, get to know them, because they're the ones who help all of us do the work that we're doing. So a little bit about today. I'm thrilled to welcome back Katharine Eagan Kelleman. She is the CEO of the Allegheny County Port Authority. She was with us, I cannot believe it, Katharine, you were with us 5 months ago, right at the onset of everything going on. We spoke to you from your home, and we spoke to you when none of us knew what was happening from hour to hour. So I'm thrilled to have you back. I'm thrilled to catch up with you. I'm thrilled to have our audience get engaged and understand the pivotal role that you play in our region and going forward, not just even today, but going forward. What's the future look like? So welcome, Katharine. And I want to start out by maybe, just provide a state of the transit system in Allegheny County.
Thank you for having me back. This is not my house, this is the office. So we are back out on the road, so to speak. I think a big thing to point out is within our agency, with Port Authority, we never stopped. So we didn't shut a garage, we didn't shut a maintenance facility. We might have changed schedules, but we were out there constantly. And through all of our service, every route except one either goes to a medical facility or it goes to grocery stores. So we had worked really closely with UPMC and Highmark and Allegheny Health, so we could map out, so we got great geocoding on where their clinics were, and then also zip code data for their employees. So as we moved forward with any kind of schedule change, we could get these critical workers to where they needed to go. And we kept going. Even we had a time in May when we had one of our maintenance locations that had a whole bunch of folks reporting positive with COVID. We went to a skeleton crew, but we didn't shut down. The work that we do is too important to shut it down. So prior to COVID, we would average about 225,000 passenger trips a day. So nearly 250,000 people, 85% of that's on bus, but a lot on rail as well. And then also about 6,000 trips a day on van services for folks who have various disabilities, seniors, so on and so forth. At the worst hit we had, we were down to maybe 20% of that ridership. That's still 50,000 trips a day. If you think about that, I will say there's a lot of transit agencies in the country that carry that many folks every single day, and that's their regular business. So even when we had a lot of folks not coming out and working from home or taking fewer trips, we still had a quarter of the ridership we had. Now that's important because now we're up to about, it depends on where you are. Some of our routes in the city proper can be close to fully back. Some of our commuter routes are maybe 90% down still. But if we want to go into a physically distanced future, not social, but physically distanced, we would need 4 times as many buses and trains to carry the folks that we would carry the first week of March. So we have times, and Audrey, you've heard me say this, I'm a broken record, I'm really sorry. On a regular Wednesday afternoon, you could go out and see an articulated bus, you know, the bendy bus. There'd be over 100 people on it. Right now, for safety, we're limiting those to 25 people. So if everyone came back at the same time, clearly that's not happening. We couldn't accommodate them. A way to think about this would be if instead of COVID, we had some freaky thing that was tied to vehicle emissions, and if you couldn't be closer than 50 feet to any car around you, what would it look like driving through town? We simply couldn't function. And that's where we are with the transit agencies. Those folks are coming back. We're still trying to help people keep distance. We added barriers to the rest of our buses. Probably 80% of our fleet had them at the front that protects the operator a little bit. We've got them on every vehicle now. We are still sanitizing every vehicle every night. We're still sanitizing every station. If not every night, then 6 nights out of the week. So we're cleaning like crazy. We have 83 maintenance openings that we are looking at right now because we've added so many cleaning positions. Because as we get more people coming back from COVID and coming back from quarantining themselves, we have more operators that can run more service, and we need to clean these vehicles. As we get more information on the virus and we're hearing it's more airborne, we're doing much more of a focus on ventilation. For instance, the Atlantic ran a piece, I think last week, where they were noting that New York City subways completely cycle out their air every 2 minutes. And that's better than almost any office building or restaurant you go to. How often does New York City subway get the credit for being super clean, right? Yeah. So we're focusing, oh, are there enough cleaning supplies? I see this from Jonathan. Yes, there are. So early on, we formed a COVID response team back in February, and we put our procurement folks on that. So they would be hearing what we were facing, and they would be ahead of the game in buying stuff. So when it was really hard to get cleaning solution, for instance, our procurement folks had already established relationships, were at the front of the line of various different type of disinfectants to get. As a backup, we always could use bleach. We can dilute it to 1 to 10, and we would have had enough bleach to clean everything. Of course, it doesn't smell as good as some of the other cleaners. So we never had an issue with the cleaning supplies. A bigger issue was immediately after this happened in May, when everyone was at home because they were quarantining or they had a pre-existing condition. We didn't have enough folks to drive buses. So we matched our service to that to match to our demand as well. We needed fewer buses out there, and then we could accommodate with fewer operators and maintenance folks that we had. So current state, we're back to anywhere from 25 to 35 to 40% system-wide on ridership. Fares are still down too. We've been collecting fares on buses since the county went to green on June 5th, I believe. And we always collected them on the rail. And so our fares are down about 65%, and we're using CARES funding. So I want to talk about that quickly. The CARES Act was passed by Congress March 27th, and it established funding for a whole bunch of industries. We here at Port Authority received $141 million. And I want to say thank you to our Senators Casey and Toomey, and to Representatives Doyle, and of course, Lamb and Reschenthaler for making sure that we got a good slice. We have $141 million we can use to reimburse COVID expenses. For the last 3 months of the fiscal year, so mid-March through April and May, we ended up invoicing something like $22 million. We went from a $7 million surplus to a $21 million shortfall based on overtime and lost fares. So we're using the CARES funding to fill the gap on fares so we can stay at the current service level as we sort of see what's going on with the world. We moved our schedules last Sunday, August 23rd, to go back to full service, and we've had more operators coming back in. We've got new operators completing training. So we're guardedly optimistic about what the world looks like today. That could change tomorrow, could change this afternoon. We'll be keeping our eyes on what happens at colleges. We'll be keeping our eyes on schools, not just because, Pittsburgh Public, when they come back, if the kids are in alternating days, they won't be writing us every day, maybe 2-3 days a week. But there's also going to be an impact to people's commute patterns still. By now you just had to keep your kids from killing each other over the summer. I could do that. But now you have to help your kids study. How do you do that? And what will that mean for us as an employer, as well as where are people going to and from? So we keep trying to stay on top of the technology and building tools so the folks who are riding us know that we're very clean. We disinfect like crazy. We just launched an OK to Go campaign. You can see parts of it on portauthority.org. List of checklists we go through and everything that we clean on all the vehicles. And of course, wearing a mask, you have to wear a mask on the bus. What we hear from our friends at UPMC is the most important thing you can do is wear a mask. The second most important thing you can do is wear a mask. I guess it's the third most important thing too. But I'm going to stop, Audrey. I'm sure you have other questions, and I'm just going.
Well, no, I think, you know, you're like in many ways, like the canary in the coal mine, because you can tell us what's going on, right? You're sort of like a leading indicator about how people, their sentiment is about going back to work and traveling and being, you know, in public transportation. I feel like that's a leading indicator that gives us, you know, a sense about sentiment and confidence. And if that's the case, and, you know, with school just being back in terms of the universities, just being back, probably a little too early to understand the impact there. But it sounds like there's some level of confidence that
So,
I'm
yeah, let me
hearing.
give you an anecdote on that. So I was at Staples on Banksville Road last week. I was picking up the stuff. So my boys, our first and third grade, just as of yesterday, and I was picking up some school supplies, and I was wearing a Port Authority shirt. And the cashier said, "Hey, do you like working at Port Authority?" And we talked a little. He had moved here from North Carolina last year. He didn't bring a car. He really liked transit here. Now, he's only been here since last fall. He rides the T every day. So I said, "Do you feel clean? Do you feel safe? Is there anything that we can do to help you?" He said, "No." He says, "I see the trains are cleaner." He says, "The first month, some folks weren't wearing masks, but now pretty much everybody is." And like, I really, really like this. And I think then I feel like you're taking care of us. So that was one anecdote, right? For everyone who I can hear say that, there may be a different perspective. So we also have done some surveying of folks who are registered Connect card holders. You don't need to register your Connect card. If you do, it makes it easier for us to turn it off or replace it if something happens. So we did a random survey reaching out to folks who had Connect cards. And we got pretty good information of folks saying they felt comfortable on service. They felt like there was enough room. They didn't feel like things were too, they didn't feel like the vehicles were really dirty. And again, we see more information now that there's very little evidence of people getting any COVID from touching a dirty surface and touching themselves. It's more from droplets and people talking back and forth. And, you know, we have far fewer, like, buses are short rides and they're very social. We have fewer people having conversations on trains. It's just an artifact of the system. So if we can keep folks wearing their masks on the buses, you know, and not pulling them down or having a big long conversation, that can mitigate about as much of the risk as we can see. But again, we have a lot of businesses which aren't fully back. We have restaurants that aren't fully back. So it'll be interesting as time keeps going on, how do they adapt their trip? And not just me, are they adding bike share? Are they going scooters? Are they, you know, are employers facilitating this? Again, we can't carry everybody. So even if businesses come back at rush hour, once that bus has hit enough people, we can't carry you. So can employers help us with flexible shifts? What can we all do together?
Great point.
To make it happen? Yeah.
That's a great point. I would imagine in healthcare that would be trickier and with round-the-clock care. But
Sure.
wondering about if you know enough about these new riders that could sort of shape, you know, policy and practices.
We do not, this would not be our chosen time to go out and do a survey on some new folks, but we've added some social media constructs last year. So we're paying a lot of attention to what are we hearing, what are the mentions we're getting on social media, what are people calling in and talking to us about, what kind of information are they looking for, are we seeing more ridership in different areas, where are we going from? So I'd say probably too early to have a lot of information to bring back. But what I'd like us to do, because things are crazy from a funding perspective, is go as long as possible with the service level that we have, so we can make intelligent decisions about what this transit network should look like. We spent, in January, we kicked off the outreach for our first system plan in memory. So again, if you don't know where you're going to be in 25 years, how do you know what to do for the next 5 years, right? Same thing as going to the grocery store without a grocery list. You know, folks should expect more from a transit agency than we build something or we buy an asset and we don't know what we're going to do with the X years that we own it, right? So we started getting really good feedback, and we were introducing new outreach tools, and then boom, COVID. So there goes the face-to-face meetings. We've been doing a lot of online meetings, trying to build in different ways to get input from people, so we can continue going forward. I mean, we've got to have a plan. We can't, none of us especially with everything going on in the world, none of us have the luxury of just sitting and waiting, but how do you go forward and have these conversations? And definitely the conversation of what transportation should do is different. I'm writing down real time. I'm writing down these comments as I see them.
Okay, we'll make sure. I'll say it for you.
Cool. So right now we're, where the conversations previously was where are you going to build light rail? Now a lot of these conversations are, do you have enough service to support essential workers, right? So if, I'm guilty as charged as buying my entire life on Amazon constantly. When Amazon opens a facility here and you have to be there at 4:30 a.m., now we have a lot more focus on running buses at 3 a.m. to connect people out there, right? Or the new hospital going up, Forbes Hospital in Monroeville will have service modifications in November to actually go directly to that campus. But then where are those folks coming from and going to? It doesn't matter if the bus is going on campus. And so now there's a lot more focus on, do you have good shelters on the busway? Are they easy to figure out? Are they tech supportive? Are they well lit? What amenities do you want to add in there? Could we build like small pockets of transit infrastructure in the city where people can transfer and wait? BRT, by definition, is supposed to accommodate a lot of folks going back and forth, but in a post-COVID world, does a 4-foot sidewalk need to be a 6-foot sidewalk, right? And instead of having a shelter with a back on it, do you build a broader, more open air thing that protects you from the elements, but it's got more of the airflow? So it's interesting to see what the sentiments are that people are asking about. Now, there's a couple questions we've had, like recruiting. We are not being dinged by recruiting. We're not seeing fewer people applying, presumably because they're worried about COVID. We've also not seen a big uptick in applications that would reflect the unemployment levels we're seeing in the region.
Oh.
So I don't have much more for you than that on the recruiting. We're not hearing in our interview process that people are worried about COVID or worried about the exposure. Could be people are self-selecting against that, but we're able to fill the positions. The other question is, do we have a real-time counter? Yes. If you're writing on True Time, there is a load factor that you can see on the True Time that'll tell you how full the vehicle is. But remember, that's built to tell you how close to full capacity bus, like 39 people. Well, right now with distancing, we want it to be 15 people. And since we don't control that app, we haven't been able to go back in for that. But what you can do is go to portauthority.org and look for this tool, Ready to Ride. Our planning team has pulled together Ready to Ride, and it includes load data for the previous 2 weeks on every single route. And you're going to see time of day listed here, and then like where in the route listed at the top. So you can go on and see if you're catching, in my area, if you want to catch Route 36 on Beverly Road at Meadowcroft, in the 8 o'clock hour, how full is that bus normally in the past 2 weeks? And it's been really helpful so people can see, well, if I wait for a different time of day or if I walk 2 stops away, I'm going to have a different experience. So I would encourage folks to go back and look for Ready to Ride if they have questions on how full the buses are right now.
And so what about, you can answer this next one before I jump in, about the coordination with local and regional transit authorities.
Oh, absolutely. So we have, so one thing we've been working on for about 2 years now is strengthening or building, if we need to, relationships with the counties adjacent to Allegheny County. So they'll, for instance, in Washington County, they might run a commuter route in and out of Allegheny, but they also have a lot of transit needs within their county that maybe we can help them with and we can talk to them about. So we've been building these conversations. So where are you coming from? Where are you going to? And can we, for instance, once we get to your fares on your phone, we had started demoing that beta test in January. Timing. Can that be reciprocal in other counties? And it's at my last agency, we had structured that. We did 5 counties in one fare agreement. So somebody was boarding in one county, moving to another, they just flashed their pass. So having those conversations, we do talk to them extensively about how the service is going to move around. And then longer term, so I'm going to say I'm really excited about the new head of the SPC, Vince Valdez. Vince came on board in June, so no matter how bad my timing is, it wasn't relocating in a pandemic.
Wow.
And I know Vince from FTA, Federal Transit Administration, and he created the Mobility on Demand programs. He created the Mobility Sandbox. So when we're talking about cool, unique tools that we could use throughout the region, but in many places that are really suited to these rural markets, we have the brain trust right here. So I'm excited about the things we can do. It's also been very focused on the tech aspect of this, not tech just to beep, but tech to improve lives, like what's the whole trip. And I want to say with him being there within 6 or 7 weeks, SPC had gone in for a grant on an ITS program. It would be very regionally focused. So I'm excited about those opportunities.
So then can we talk about electric buses? Is this
oh my gosh, let's do that.
Finally, I've been waiting all day for the electric bus part of this thing.
All right, I know you're like, shut up, lady. So we took delivery, I want to say late last year, of 2 electric buses. And normally when we get new buses, we feel them out for a couple of months before we put them in revenue service. Wanted to make sure everything was going great for electric. We had this really great launch planned for April 10th with the county executive. Because he's been really focused on air quality and sustainability issues, like converting over what we can do, again, with the timing. But we just went ahead and put the buses in service. So we've been running them on the 88 pin, but other buses in other routes in East Liberty. East Liberty serves our most densely populated areas. So if you're gonna look for a place where you wanna reduce even by 1 bus, the diesel particulates you're dumping out, East Liberty is a place that you start. Also, the electric buses are so quiet. And if you, many of us got into a Prius for the first time in 2003 or 4, like, oh my gosh, it's so quiet, I can't hear anything. Electric buses are the same thing. It takes down some of that background stress. So we're happy to have the 2 buses out there. We have just approved a purchase for 6 more buses. The buses are working okay. We're looking at the charging infrastructure, which is something we have to do from scratch. Interesting, before you come to Pittsburgh, everyone says it's different and you say no. And then you get here and you say, have you looked at these hills? Oh my gosh. So our vehicle contracts stipulate that an engine must be able to get up a 16% grade. We're one of the only places in the country that require that. Yep, so, and these buses can do that. But again, since, you may have this much battery capacity, what happens? The air conditioning is a big drain. The heater is a big drain. A full bus is a big drain. So we've been testing out these buses. I would like to see us be able to really make a commitment to electrify the fleet. That's 720 vehicles. It would probably cost about $250 million in capital. It would save us money in the long run. We'll talk about that. I got you on the quiet buses.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, a really good point.
Yeah.
So it would be great for us not just to go to electric, but to ensure that the electric that we're using to fuel our buses is also clean, right? There's not so much a city plan for charging stations, but city and Duquesne Power and Light and regional for charging stations, because we'll charge them at the garage. The BRT plans include charging stations in Oakland and then heavier charging in Highland Park. So we're continuing to partner on that. So, remember our light rails fleet is 100% electric already. So the T is completely electric, but are we able to guarantee that the electric we're purchasing to power those trains is not coal? Like, where do we go further down the line for that? It's not necessarily the sunniest town in the country. So solar on top of roofs is not as.
We had a beautiful summer.
We did. And yesterday was fabulous. But maybe not for solar power, I'm just saying. So we're looking at all of those aspects about, like, when you say you're going to go electric, what does that really mean and how sustainable is that? I saw the note of someone saying quiet buses are scary. So
right.
it's quieter. It is not silent. So the big difference where you'll notice is if you're on the bus in the back, where you normally hear all the air handling and all these components, it's quieter there. All the other systems that are out there will still be making noise. And I am aware that as quiet as electric buses have come out, there's been a lot of partnership with Lighthouse for the Blind and American Federation for the Blind, making sure that the vehicle is noisy enough that somebody with visual impairment can hear that. I know that's one of the issues that we have worked on, like not something like a screaming bus, but what do you do to make sure that somebody knows a 30,000 pound vehicle is bearing down on you? I think there's definitely a safety concern there, and the manufacturers have been working on different responses for that. Mm-hmm. So thank you. That's a good thing for me to reiterate with our folks as we're moving forward.
Mm-hmm. No, you've been busy. So you've had an annual budget that's approaching about $500 million. And
we are.
Your leadership, right? Is that right? $500 million?
A budget for this year, all things being equal, if nothing changed, would be about 470 to 480 million in operating and about 120. When you add in capital, it is over $500 million annually. Yeah.
That's what I thought. So under your leadership, you've made it a priority and you do this regularly, so to include minority and women-owned businesses in your supply chain. Talk about what your strategy is there. And before we actually were on, we were just chatting about a recent RFP that she had out and how inclusive it struck us and what we heard in the community. So talk about why that's important and what your strategy is around that.
Well, thank you first for that feedback. I already texted the marketing team and let them know that we got good feedback. So that was really good. It's great to hear. Thank you. So, so a couple things on that. Okay, so in this, a lot has happened this year. First, we have COVID, that if you didn't think transit touched your life, you are relying on someone who takes transit, whether that's somebody who was able to get to their doctor's office to process your refill so you didn't have to come back in. Like, all my refills that expired in May were automatically refilled. I guarantee the people at my UPMC office upstairs were taking transit. If your kids are or not in school, somebody who's supporting that child is taking transit to get around. If you bought school supplies, the guy who worked at Staples, who was helping you pick the cool pencil bag for your kid, is riding transit. People at Giant Eagle are riding it. Like, I think COVID underlined how much of the economy is really centered on that. And as people start driving again, we're gonna be a lot more sensitive, I think, as traffic picks up, to really realizing the cost of parking for us. Like, there's 3 times as many jobs as parking places downtown usually. And what happens when everybody's driving everywhere? And so what is our collective interest in making sure transit is clean and reliable and ubiquitous, right? Then we lay on top of this the murder of George Floyd. And it's not just George Floyd, right? It's Breonna Taylor, it's Ahmaud Arbery, it's, we are already as a country in this this wound up, stressed out place from COVID, and then boom. We're not in the best place to react to stuff, but we don't get to choose when we can react, right? So we have a lot of conversations internally with our staff, with communities. I've always been an advocate that we run service, but our communities own it. So since I've been here, we've added community relations folks. We've greatly expanded the footprint of where we sponsor. For instance, our sponsorship at Nazareth Prep helps somebody go through a really amazing educational experience.
Yeah, we always take a student from there.
Yeah, we'll see. Now we're in it together. So we have a lot that we've done. We've reinvested in our staff with more unconscious bias training, expanding, like internally, minority promotions have gone from 39% in 2018 to 52% last year. We're working on pay equity. So we have a lot going on, but to your point, I'm getting there, with a $480 million budget and with, 2,600 employees, it's not just that we're carrying people from A to B, we're buying a boatload of stuff. And so I'm happy to say, I'm hopeful that I'm not ratting anybody out, but Ronnie Wright, who I think is a member of the Tech Council, is a supplier to us for our thermometers. And last year, we held our very first vendor day in November over the IBW hall. We had over 150 vendors show up, and over a third of those vendors were minority or disadvantaged businesses, right? Right. And my marching orders were, if you have done business with us before, make a new friend today. The point of this program is to make sure that everyone in our community should have equal access to their tax dollars they have paid into Harrisburg and they've paid them into DC. We should be able to have access, and a stronger economy here generates more ad valorem that helps us pay for schools, it helps us play, the benefits just cascade through. And since our staff had met Ronnie at the vendor day, when I got the suggestion from the Tech Council to do business with Ronnie, my procurement folks are like, oh yeah, she's on back order. She's out of thermometers, but we're already doing business.
Oh, that's great.
We have had one DBE person historically. So and what that means, one specialist who certifies businesses. So if you're a small veteran or minority owned business looking to certify, we can do that process for you. Makes life easier. And then we can and then you can compete for if you're certified with us, you're certified with everybody. But we have one person doing that, sitting on RFPs, doing a whole bunch of stuff. It's too much work for one person. So we're actively recruiting a new DBE person. So it'll give us 2, and we will continue to build more. Our agency-wide goals are deplorably low because we've always stuck with a bare minimum. So it's been 8 or 9%. But on the system plan that I mentioned, we launched in January, we had a 28% goal, and we were able to get that. And I'm very proud that the areas that we focused on were not like stereotypical, put a small business here. We have engineers and planners and a lot of quantitative analysis going on, as well as outreach and other administrative support it's very broad-based. And like the marketing RFP you just mentioned,
Mhm.
instead of doing one big kahuna contract, we broke it into smaller components. So a smaller business that might be really good at data analysis, or a really tiny team that's fantastic at, maybe super dynamic, easy to get to video, has the ability to compete, and they can sub in with a larger firm. So I'm excited to see how that goes. And we will continue to move forward in that area. So we'll be setting higher goals. I'm just talking, Audrey and I were just talking that right now, like, I'm waving it. I mean, I feel like, on TV, we're finalizing our director for equity and inclusion job description so we can kick off the development of an entire department, and not just, the old school idea of diversity, of how many people are you hiring, what about this, but how comfortable do people feel here? How are we building better relationships in various communities? Do people have the skills to point out that their coworker said something that they need to think about? But equity for us can transcend that. I mean, we have a critical role to play in land use and development. So when we're talking about developing an extension potentially on a busway, are we thinking broadly, and we want to support the creation of affordable housing? And you might say, well, why does Port Authority have a dog in this hunt? Well, what's the point of transit for many people if it's not to get them from their home somewhere else? And if your home is in Monroeville and your job is in Moon, I want you to think about the quality of life if you drove that every day. And now imagine doubling the length of that trip because you had to be on transit and you had to transfer.
Right.
That's no way to live. That's no way to live. And we're not going to be able to support those regional jobs or regional growth and put that paycheck in your pocket if that's the trip everyone's taking. So can we create the place where housing is more conveniently located, and not just housing is conveniently located, housing you can afford? I mean, the close-in suburbs have great schools, but the property taxes will price many people out of a rental. If we take our equity role seriously, how are we going to support that? And again, equity doesn't mean that one person gets less. It means more people get the chance to get that better outcome. And if we care about our region, if we care about the economy, then we should be absolutely focused on full economic participation. So equity, it's not just the thing that makes your grandma proud. It's an economic investment. There's a lot of reasons that we'd want to do this. I'd say also last year, Pitt released a study that Pittsburgh is the worst city in the country for Black women, which is pretty horrible to look at. And the United Way facilitated a wonderful conversation with Dr. Hughley from Pitt's Center for Race Studies and Policies today, and was just documenting the outcome that for Black children in Pittsburgh, we have the highest rate of children under 5 living in poverty. What are we doing to make this a more equitable community? Because those kids who are under 5 living in poverty, there are workers in 10 to 15 years. And if they're functionally illiterate, we can't grow, and they can't grow, and their children can't grow. And I'm preaching, but we're looking at equity in a very broad lens, and we're, we don't have the luxury of waiting until timbers have cooled. So it's the appropriate time for us to have these conversations.
It is. So here you have, we're wrapping up our program, but you see Dr. Lori Paludi, who's saying service has gotten better, buses are cleaner.
Thank you, Dr. Paludi. Appreciate that.
That's great. So listen, all of you are getting a chance to get an upfront view of Katharine, who runs the Port Authority. You can hear what her passion is. You can hear what she cares about, and it's about the whole community. And that's manifested in everything that you've done since you've been here, and making us be accountable to the issues that are of large scale in terms of equity is, I applaud you. I applaud you for telling all of us to step it up and don't think of it as an old way of diversity and inclusion, but it's really community,
Yes,
equity, and access. And
our world has shifted, and I'm going to beg for like 20 more seconds. The Trib did an article some point in August about a letter coming out from the Executive Action and Research Network, and it's a group that was founded by a couple of Gen X going into millennial Black CEOs saying, hey, Pittsburgh, we can do better. And I would encourage all of us to, Google for it. It's a 2-page letter, and it identifies, easy steps to take to our commitment and be more equitable. We've brought that in. So we're very supportive of trying to match our success to that. And also the Corporate Equity and Inclusion Roundtable has been really helpful, helping us have some blueprints. But I'd say you want the most current thing, go Google that Earn letter. I think it's a wonderful
Right.
place to
So
start.
right. So we have had George Robinson on our
Wonderful.
show, and
Great.
we're very connected to him as he starts to roll out, Earn. So really appreciate that.
Oh, I see. Brian, thank you for that. I appreciate. Yes, I think
So
the best thing we can do is how can we support the growth of the city we want our children to inherit.
yes, and I think they're spot on. So Catherine, keep up the great work. Know that we are your fans, know that we support you, and know that you can count on us. So,
Well, and thank you for all the support everyone's giving Port Authority. Any ideas you have, remember, like Audrey's got my contact information. I'm on Twitter. Please check out Next Transit. It's NEX Transit. That's a website for our growing our system plan. Let's do this together. Let's swing for the fences. Who knows what the fences are going to look like in 2 years? But if we're not in the front, somebody else will be. So let's just go and redefine what we need it to be.
I agree. So thank you so
you.
much. So everyone knows that tomorrow we have the president of the Pittsburgh Technical Council, and then we also have the following day, Greg Baer, who runs the Buell Foundation, is going to talk about Remake Learning. So thank you all. Catherine, stay safe. Appreciate everyone joining us today, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes.